Today on the Bumper to Bumper Roadmap, we're going to be addressing an email from bumpertobumperradio.com, open phones and text, and how the rules have changed in the auto repair shop in the last 20, 30 years. And I think about this, Matt, you could not take a technician from 30 years ago, put him in a time machine and bring him to today, and he would know anything that was going on in the shop.
He would flip his lid. He wouldn't know what to think. He probably wouldn't know where to start in some cases, and he'd be putting a whole bunch of parts in cars that didn't need to be replaced anymore.
You're like, you people are crazy, you know? I mean, even the fact you're working on these cars, you got to get a scanner out to check the brakes. You know, that's different, way different.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't. Well, I get into cars every now and then, and I got to sit there for a minute. It's a car I haven't been in yet, and I'm like, okay, how do I start this car?
Yeah, you look around, look for the button, what does what. You know, you don't know if you're going to hit the seat ejection or what the heck's going to happen. But
yeah, for sure. I get ejection for the passenger seat in all my cars.
You know, one of my favorite commercials. Yeah, we're getting off on tangents here, but it's like, you know, the ejection seat to get away, you know, from the passenger. There's a Snickers commercial or something. There's two guys, and he says, "Oh, I like mine with almonds." Maybe there's a guy from the Northeast. He says almonds, and after a couple of times back and forth, the driver just says, "Forget this." He just opens the door and falls out of the car, and that was his ejection seat. Like, I've had enough.
I'm done with you.
I'm out of here. So I'll get myself out of this madness. But speaking of madness, Dave, I mean, what we were talking about, I think you had something maybe triggered this, but we get cars today. I mean, when I grew up, started working in a gas station, when I was messing with cars, I mean, I started off an old Volkswagen.
What was the hourly rate when you started?
Oh, gosh, like $42 an hour, maybe, if that.
Mm-hmm.
I very distinctly remember $48 an hour in 1988.
You know, the average in Tempe, where I work, is 120.
Yeah.
The average. Some are higher, some are lower. That's the average. That's 3 times that.
Right. Big time.
Okay.
So, but a lot of things have changed. And so, you know, working in the gas station environment, you see a lot of cars coming in and gosh, you were putting hoses on cars twice a year, you know, every couple years. You take your, you know, kind of back then it was your rear wheel drive American car, and maybe it didn't even matter on your, you know, your import or your foreign car, but you were getting hoses. You get them, you know, after maybe the first 2 years, 3, 4 years. Then it was every couple years because, you know, the upper radiator hose was going bad. You know, coolant used to have to flush it every 2 years, maybe 30,000 miles. Now it's going forever.
What about fuel filters? Some cars don't even have them.
Yeah, or they're built into the fuel tank. You never replace the fuel filter. So like you said, Dave, what you used to practice, or if you want to call yourself an automotive practitioner, what we used to do on cars 20, 30, 40 years ago, we're not doing today, but some people are. They're applying yesterday's rules to cars with today's technology and maybe over-servicing, but you always say, Dave, sometimes a service is better than no service. A bad service is better than no service at all. And people are getting a disservice by overbuying repairs.
Yeah, a bad service is worse than no service at all. You know, in some cases, and this is where this came from. This is hot on my topic. All right, I get this car in my shop. They've got a transmission problem. They just left the dealership, and the dealership did $2,200 worth of regular maintenance-y type repairs.
Off of no complaint.
No complaint and no issues.
Okay.
But they went in, they got a timing belt, and at 90,000 miles, justified. Timing belt was needed. But they got the transmission serviced. They got new upper and lower radiator hoses. And they actually left, and they drove away, and they're like, wow, the car's not right. And then they went back to the shop, and the dealership is where they went. They went back to the dealership, and the dealer did something, and they came back out and said, here's your keys. We left something unplugged, and sent them on their way, and their transmission didn't work the same, so they ended up at my shop. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm test driving it with them and kind of interviewing about what had happened with the car and everything. And, you know, I opened the hood on this car. This car's a nice car. It's well taken care of, clean one owner. And it's got these new radiator hoses, an upper and lower hose. One's a Gates, which is a aftermarket brand, and then the other one was a Dayco, which is again an aftermarket brand. And I'm like, in some of those aftermarket hoses, you actually have to cut them, trim them up to make them fit more appropriately because they kind of don't fit right.
Well, yeah, like you'll see if you look one up, they'll say it's use the 27065 and cut at Mark C, because that hose can fit 2 other cars if it's not cut. So.
Well, they were at the dealership, and in the dealership for years has said, come to the dealership because we're the ones using the genuine parts, you know? And here they left the dealership with aftermarket hoses that don't even fit right. And here's where I get a little steamy. The modern Asian car, I don't see these hoses going bad at 90,000 miles, and I don't even see them going bad at 150,000 miles. You got to start monitoring them when you start getting up there in the mileage. But they probably took off perfectly fine hoses that would have served these people for another 50, 60,000 miles. They took off the good hoses, and they put on the crap hoses. And they didn't even do a good job installing the crap hoses. So it made me mad.
I know you're all steam. I'm going to debate you a little bit. I don't think the hoses are crappy hoses. Dayco, and I don't use Dayco hoses, but Dayco is an original manufacturer for many OE cars. They're on there. You see their emblems. I mean, you take a GM belt, for example, it says right in there Dayco. Sometimes it's Gates. You take a Honda, that's a Bando belt. So there's different brands. So I agree. They probably got over-serviced. But my thing is, and I say it to my guys all the time, people need the radiator hoses? What about all the other 15 hoses? Why aren't we replacing those? If one of these might break, and we're just doing these as maintenance, what about the other 15 hoses? Well, a lot of people won't present that to the customer because two things. Number one, they don't have a technician in the shop that can do it. It's very time-consuming. I know those little teeny eccentric hoses that blow once in a while. But it's expensive. Man, you blow the estimate out. But
this particular dealership that I know of, I know of the dealership, and they don't hire people that know anything about cars to be service writers.
You're talking about salespeople, yeah.
They hire salespeople, exactly. And if a technician says, hey, put this on the car, a technician who's on what I call flat rate, so he's paid by the job, hey, put this on, recommend this to the customer. Okay. They don't know why. They actually don't even know what's under the hood. And so I feel like these people got sold, but it was a service writer and maybe the service writer didn't know, doesn't really know, what's the practice of the dealership, but they're selling. They're not looking out for their best interest. And I think that's what ticks me off.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of two models, I think, or not two models, but there's a couple different ways of servicing cars. There's businesses that are serving cars just to make money regardless of the outcome for the customer. And there's, the way I look at it is if you take care of the customer, the money will follow.
Well, yeah.
It's the way. If you look out for their best interest, it will work every time, and you don't have to do anything special. But if it's just one of these sales, let's sell, well, gosh, all of a sudden every car needs hoses at 80,000 miles when they're perfectly good till 120, 150,000 miles.
Well, yeah, and that's how they train some of the advisors, I suspect, is we need sales. It's off of numbers. And they're just pushing them. It sounds good. Hey, I was a technician at Porsche. I worked at a Porsche dealership. You want to start getting into salesmen. This was before Porsches were water cooled. This was the air cooled days, 1994. Now we're talking about 911. It's not 944s and the stuff that obviously have water. I was servicing a 911. That's an air-cooled engine. My service advisor came back to me so happy because not only did he sell all the stuff that I recommended on this car, but he sold a coolant flush. The car doesn't even have coolant. The guy bought it or sold it, and the customer bought it. Just ignorance is bliss by both of them.
I had a friend. Well, he's still my friend. He said, where should I go to get my car serviced, Dave? I'm not coming all the way down there to see you. Is there anyone up by me? And I said, yeah, go over here. My friend works there. He'll take great care of you. So he started going there for years. Well, the place got sold out, and now he still goes in there for his maintenance, and he calls over to me, and he says, well, they're recommending me a transmission service and a power steering service and this service and that service. I said, that car has an electric power steering on it. It isn't the service there. He goes, yeah, no. He goes, I just paid for it.
Well, and let's talk about the hoses. That's it's
a whole nother direction.
A whole other thing. Oh my goodness, it goes with that 911. But this is the kind of time of year going into summertime when you're going to be at the shop and they're going to say, "Oh, your cooling system. You should do the hose. You should do the thermostat. You should do the whatever." I try to tie these repairs in at my shop with another repair. For example, if we're doing your timing belt on your Toyota pickup, for example, or your 4Runner, we're going to take the radiator out because it's really easy. It makes the rest of the job easy. It's right there. Yeah, I'm going to recommend let's do the upper and lower hose because we have them off. But barring some other symptom, you really need to be talking to the shop and saying, why do you recommend I replace these hoses? For no reason. I mean, I don't have a symptom, so tell me more. Why do I need to do this? What's the benefit? And what other hoses? What about the other ones? What happens? Ask these questions and engage with the service advisor. I mean, as the owner, an advisor at times, I really like to help you understand, because what happens when you don't understand, there's where the bad review comes from, because we didn't there's some miscommunication, something didn't get told right or was misunderstood, maybe the car doesn't get fixed right, and then there's the pattern failures.